You cannot imagine that. Understand the word. Phone?
You don't hear, right?
No audio.
Okay. We're gonna actually separate. Not. Okay.
Oh.
There we go. I was about to sing Adele. Hi. Do you want to do the introduction? Yeah, okay. Still waiting on the fire alarm, but we've got all kind of things for people to be hypervigilant about, right? So one of the things, and hopefully we'll get that figured out, and you'll see the results of that incredible research project that was done, because it's incredibly important. And what we were going to do is sort of go off of that research to talk more about the continued research that we're doing with the Neurofeedback Advocacy Project. I think a big part of, as Bernhard said, is that we want to continue to get these outcome measures and really do this. To do more research and get more outcomes. I said to a couple of people in the break, we're really looking to how do we get neurofeedback to be a standard of care for mental health care. I mean, it's just where we need to be as part of that. It's sort of like where EMDR was in the early 2000s, it's now a standard evidence-based practice. And people thought it was woo-woo back then. So what we're really trying to do is how do we get neurofeedback to be a standard of care. So what you'll hear is a lot of our information about results that we get, a few more stories about the information we get, and then you're going to hear from our presenters here from the KEY program right here in Boston, how we actually implement it in an agency setting across different levels of care and how it can be done. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Christy.
So welcome. So what I was going to say, and thank Bernhard for his research, because what you will see at the end is how his research really validates what I see and do every day in the clinical setting. And you know, when you've heard Colette and Carrie talk about how it is a game changer, and we really do mean that. And I love Carrie's Windex analogy about how neurofeedback cures everything, and that's been my experience. Just in my friend group, my pickleball group, we're all like menopausal women, and we talk about all of our ailments. And one of my friends last week was talking about her husband who has tinnitus. And I said, well, you know, neurofeedback could probably help that. And she like stops and she looks at me and she says, that neurofeedback stuff really cures everything, doesn't it? And I was like, well, kind of, you know. And that we all get a real passion for it because we just see it change lives every day. And what I want to talk to you about today is, you know, you've seen like some of the research, you've heard about what is neurofeedback. Now what I want to talk about is how we can help implement neurofeedback programs in agencies or private practices. And then we have the KEY program here is going to talk about their experience. You can't hear me, is that what I hear someone saying? Oh, okay, you're good. Okay, perfect. But I want to tell you about how we got started. So the Neurofeedback Advocacy Project is something that's near and dear to my heart. And we owe this vision to Matt Fleischman, and this is his picture right here. And Matt was a clinical psychologist in Eugene, Oregon, and that's where I am from. I actually worked with Matt about 32 years ago, and I was one of his psych assistants, and his specialty was ADHD. And so he's been doing neurofeedback a long time, and as it has progressed and gotten better, he always was very innovative in how he presented it to his clients. And so Matt retired 2018, 2019, and when he was getting ready to retire, he thought, you know, the problem with neurofeedback is that it hasn't got to the people that really need it the most. And his practice was a lot of private pay, and so he recognized that there was a need to bring neurofeedback to agencies or clinicians, you know, that are serving underserved communities so that they can also get the help they need. So it's really like his vision. Unfortunately, I'm gonna get choked up, Matt passed away this last year. And, but we are carrying on his legacy, and he had a vision to touch 10,000 lives. And that's what we're all doing like every day. And we're really bringing, you know, hope to people that maybe didn't have it before. And as a clinician, it's been really energizing because you get to see people make change that maybe in just traditional talk therapies, they wouldn't. And you know, Colette mentioned how we have so many different modalities that we can use. And neurofeedback's not a magic wand that fixes everything, but it sure as heck helps someone to regulate their nervous system and for them to get better outcomes, and also quicker. That's the other thing that I've really noticed. So I just want to assure Matt, what's really cool today is we have Ross, his son, who's with us, and he's joined our board. And it's funny to me because isn't any surprise that someone who's spent his entire career with neurofeedback working with people that regulate emotions has a son that's an ER doctor. And so Ross is an ER doctor in Southern California, and he's joined our board and helping us to carry on Matt's mission. So we're really excited about that. So what do we do? What is this project? So one of the things that we want to do is help people implement neurofeedback programs. I'm sure many of you have gone to a training session and you leave and you think this is the latest, greatest, and then you maybe forget how to do it or there's no support system. And so what we really try and do is develop a community of support. We want to help you identify like who are the clinicians in your agency or your private practice that would do well with this. We've learned a few things along the way of what makes a good neurofeedback clinician. We want to have you implement it along with all the other things that you're normally doing. We don't want to take away those. Like, you know, they talked about earlier with neurofeedback and EMDR. A lot of the clients in my clinic do both, but they might start with the neurofeedback because they need that regulation before they can do maybe the resourcing of EMDR. And that's really how I got started, is in 2019, we had gone through the training, myself and a colleague, went through a training, I believe it was September, and we started to see maybe a few clients. I think we maybe had like 3 or 4 clients that we were each seeing, and then COVID hit and our clinics all shut down. And my entire caseload, I work with children and youth and families in a nonprofit, we're like 99% Medicaid. My entire caseload was pretty much 7 to 10-year-olds with ADHD, and we contract with schools, so we provide the mental health in the schools. So suddenly, my job, which was great going into the schools, turned into Zoom therapy with 7 to 10-year-olds with ADHD. And I don't know about you, but I was not going to make it much longer in this field, and I'm totally serious. I mean, I was even telling my husband, like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, DoorDashing's looking pretty good right now, you know? And it was, I mean, I could tell you stories of situations they would bring their little Zoom camera on the phone into, and I mean, we have to laugh about it now, but it was at that time where our agency let my colleague Cami and I, we were the only 2 trained in our agency, and they said, well, you're basically like a medical device. You 2 can come in and you can see clients in the office. And so both of us turned our caseloads from talk therapy on Zoom into neurofeedback. And miraculously, something that we weren't, you know, we thought, yeah, this is a great thing, but what we started to see is like the amazing results that these clients were having when my other, you know, therapists in our office, they weren't seeing those results with just talk therapy alone, because, you know, the entire office had to switch to Zoom therapy. So that's really when I personally developed the passion and just was sold on it, because I was just seeing clients during a very difficult time of COVID and so many things that were going on in their own lives. And as therapists, we were also dealing with changes. And so to be able to regulate myself even, I'm sure people thought I probably should maybe done a little bit more neurofeedback, but anyway, it's great that we have that tool, you know, in our toolbox to use. So that's how I got started, and then originally Carrie, Colette, and myself, we were like I think it was 4 or 5 agencies that got started in a pilot project back then. And that's how we've grown since that time, is we all started to see results in our individualized agencies. So the training, what we provide is a training program to train neurofeedback clinicians. And like we want to serve underserved populations, so that could be Medicaid, it could be first responders, it could be veterans. It could be, maybe you're a private practice clinician and you do a sliding fee scale, or you do some pro bono work, or you bill Medicaid and private insurance. So there's lots of different ways that we can serve underserved communities. But what we do is provide training. So it's a very thorough training process. By the end of day 1, you are receiving neurofeedback and you're also training your training partner. So we hit the ground running. And then after that, we take a 2-week break, and in that 2-week break, we want you to start getting, seeing clients, whether it could be family, friends, coworkers, whoever, but starting to get that experience. And then we come back for the final 2 days, and you implement and you learn more about how different presentation types that can benefit from neurofeedback. It says, like, our approach is designed to empower agencies to achieve better client outcomes, reduce clinician burnout, and create sustainable, scalable programs, bringing meaningful change. And that's really what we're about. I wouldn't be here if I didn't see that happening, like literally on a daily basis. So it's something that I believe very much in. Let's see, so we talk about like results and all these are amazing results. Well, how can you trust what we say? Is it just lip service? And that's one thing that I think Bernhard kind of alluded to is our results tracking system. And this is actually Matt. This is his baby. And if you go to our website, neurofeedbackadvocacyproject.com, you'll see a results page. And what this is when someone comes in for a session, the first thing that we're going to do is a very thorough intake. And we've talked a lot about neurofeedback being a personalized approach. So someone comes in like, oh, I have PTSD. It is not like, oh, then you need this protocol with this frequency. We're looking at very specific symptoms and how that nervous system responds. And starting in utero, I mean, we're asking questions about in utero development to current day. And so once we do that, then the next step from that is asking, like, well, what symptoms do we want to track? And how I sometimes word it is, how would you know that neurofeedback is working for you? Like, what would be better? So you can see it's really tiny, but you can see over here in that top row, like it was emotional reactivity. I think there's something related to, I can't even read that hardly. But this person identified 5 concerns that we're going to track. And every person's symptom tracking is going to look different because it's very personalized. We often have something related to sleep or emotional regulation or mood, a whole gamut of things, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, encopresis, enuresis, you name it. I work with a lot of kids, so that's a common one. And so what we're doing is sitting down with a client and asking them on a daily basis, like, give me a rating 0 to 10. Like 10 being the worst, 0 being no problem. And then I want them to give me a rating. And then I'm going to document that. And you'll see here, like on the slide on the right, when I believe this is one of Carrie's clients. So when she did this, there's definitely the oranges and the yellows, and they're more higher numbers. So there's like a couple.
Split 2. Split pace, 15 minutes, 59 seconds per mile.
10s in there, a 6, 7, 8, and that's pretty typical. And then as you go down, after every session, we're checking in. So we do a session, we make adjustments, and this is all stuff that we teach in our training, like what adjustments would need to make based on different presentations. And we'll make a change of, is this better, worse, or the same? I say that all the time. Was it better, worse than the same? Was your sleep better, worse, or the same? And then we'll give a rating for that particular day. And so, I mean, for this particular client, after, I think it was close to 20 sessions, you'll notice like the yellows and the oranges all turn into greens and light greens. Now, does it always look like that? No. But more often than not, after, particularly at 10, 20 sessions, you're definitely seeing some progress. I mean, I can't think of a time where I haven't seen some progress in something. And then you also want to look at if you're not seeing progress, what are the factors? Like one of the things we talk about is, do you want someone to make a med change, like when they start neurofeedback? No, because I can't tell what's what. And so there's certain times like that where we might pause for a while. But generally speaking, this is kind of what your results page would look like. And it's really fun to take some of these graphs and to be able to show back the client, or in my case, a lot of times it's the parent, and they love to see those results. And so we collect the data after 20 sessions. So we have, I think 17, oh, it's on the next slide, but we are collecting the data after 20 sessions. So when we first started this project, again, like with the 4 or 5 agencies, you know, our N was like, you know, 25 and then 100. Now we're up to 1751. And that's the 1,751 clients that have got to 20 sessions is what we have right now, which is pretty exciting for those of us that have been in this really since day one. And what we're seeing is the 40% reduction in severity of concerns. And all this data is on our website, so you can go to our website and see specific things. What I think is really interesting about this 40% reduction in severity of concerns is that our average ACEs score is 4.6. So this is, you know, definitely, we have, you know, higher and lower, but 40% reduction in severity of concerns with an average of a 4.6 ACEs score, that's pretty impressive. Let's see, wrong way. There we go. 56% reduction in self-harm or suicidal ideation. I worked with a lot of like teens and youth, and like one mom said to me, you know, who was dealing with self-harm and suicidal ideation, my son's light is shining again. And I'll never forget the comment. I love the little snippets that parents give you sometimes when you're working with them. Another really good one is 71% improvement in drug and alcohol relapses. Now remember, this is all self-report too. This is all self-report data. And I'll just say a side note, like on the addictions, we also have a program that we're in Eugene that is a gambling addiction program, and they're really seeing amazing results with that population as well. 59% reduction in disciplinary actions in school. Now this is one I can talk about all day long because I work with a lot of youth, and but there, you know, I could tell you multiple stories, as we all could. But there's a couple that stand out that I like to share. And one is this client that was an 8-year-old boy. He was running out of his therapy sessions, so his mom would bring him, and we're kind of closer to a busy street. And he ran out a couple times, and this was one, I think he was assigned to an intern and probably should never have been. But anyway, and so this client we needed to basically, you know, refer to a higher level of care. And, you know, as we all know, that doesn't happen immediately. There's a lag. And so the mom is just calling in desperation, talks to our director, and she calls me and tells me that, you know, we need to refer this kid out. And I said, Beth, I go, just give me a few sessions. Let me see what I can do. So this kid came in, and the first time, I mean, he did not want to be there. And the whole thing of the electrodes, he had a lot of sensory issues, not having that. And it's a funny story because, I mean, literally the first time, I think I just let him watch a movie and just trying to build rapport because he wasn't going to trust me for anything. And as we progressed, it was like 5 minutes. And then he could do 10 minutes. But there were times that he pulled off electrodes. There were times he threw things in the room. And I had the mom stay in the entire session for safety reasons. And that's not typical. That's a little bit unusual. But the mom would literally sit in the whole time. And sometimes he would just go off on us. We had to call crisis backup one time. And, you know, I'd walk out of the office and my staff would look at me like, what are you doing in there? Like, that is crazy. You're so loud. But then they'll laugh because it's like, but then you're done and these kids just kind of walk out calm. Like, what are you doing in there? You know? And so anyway, and so this kid eventually ended up doing 30 sessions. I knew we were making progress because after about session 15 or 16-ish, he had thrown something at me and his mom one day, and then he came back and he apologized. I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. So anyway, he was a character, and he got to about 30 sessions. He'd been kicked out of school. His mom was trying to homeschool. That wasn't going very well. His mom was in a domestic violence situation. Parents were divorcing. And the kid, I mean, just trauma. And so we got to about 30 sessions. He was in a homeschool kind of co-op, And originally, like, he wasn't even allowed in that. And by the time that we ended at 30 sessions, he was actually engaging with peers. He was, you know, appropriate to teachers, and he was making some peer connections, which had all been taken away when he left the public school system, which had been like, I think 3 or 4 months before that. And the funniest thing about this kid, and why I always remember him, is, and I would get like anxious. He was my 9 a.m. Monday morning client because nobody else was in the office. So I said, I will see you at 9 a.m. because then you won't disrupt anybody else. And sometimes on Sunday night, I would find myself getting a little anxious. I needed to hook myself up then. But anyway, his last session, he comes running in the front lobby, and he comes in and he brings in me this little toy. And he goes, "This is for you." I'm like, "It is, thank you so much." And he goes, "I don't want you to ever forget me." And it was so hard for me not to laugh, because I'm thinking my inner dialogue is like, "Oh, don't you worry, I am never gonna forget you." And then his mom looked at me and said, "I had no idea he was gonna do that. Like, he doesn't do that with people." So I knew we had something, right, when those stories. And then just recently, actually, I started with a new client a couple, it's probably been a month or 2 now, and this kid is just a fun kid, and his father's incarcerated, he's just dealing with a lot of stress, and mom's just having a hard time. And when she would come to sessions, she would show me the text messages from the teacher. I mean, this teacher spent so much time, literally 3 and 4 paragraphs about everything that this kid had done that day. And so good information, because that's really helpful to have the teacher report, for sure. And so I kept making tweaks, and you know, one time I did something that I thought would work, it didn't work. She's like, "Yeah, don't do that again." I was like, "Okay," but we're on track now. And before I came out here, I saw him last Wednesday, and she walked in my office and she said, "Christy, I have not had a text message from a teacher in 3 weeks." And she used to get her own anxiety daily, because she was like, "Am I gonna have to go pick him up?" I mean, she couldn't even have a job because she would have to leave to go pick him up from school. So those are, I mean, I could go on and on. Colette could tell you stories, Carrie could tell you stories, and they're gonna share some too. But that's just what I get to do every day. And so it's really energizing. We kind of talked about all these things. What I have seen is better, faster clinical results. When you have a regulated staff, Colette talked about that they tend to want to stay. It's another tool that they get to use. The burnout doesn't seem to be as much. I've personally experienced that myself. I feel re-energized in my mental health career, rather than probably 7 years ago. I was kind of maybe wanting to get out. I recently had one of our staff attend a training earlier this year, and he's great, and he's really excited to get this going with clients. And he texted me, he's like, "I gotta tell you about this conversation I just had with this grandma." So I call him back, and he's like, "Christy, this grandma," we have a crisis response at my agency, and this kid utilized our crisis response team quite a bit. And so he calls and he says, "Christy, I have to tell you about this grandma who's raising this child, and she was in constant crisis. And she called me last week, and she said, since he started neurofeedback," and this was probably 4 sessions in, she said, his name's Josh, "Josh, we've gone from crisis to cuddles at our house." And I just love that, crisis to cuddles. So if nothing else, like neurofeedback can help with that, right? And so what I'm really excited to share also with you is about, you know, how this neurofeedback stuff gets implemented in a community agency. And it's super exciting for me and all of us to have the KEY program here, because a year ago at this conference, Bernhard, Matt, Brendan, and Colette and I sat and had lunch with Brendan, and we talked about like how neurofeedback could help the KEY program, and they have residential and outpatient. And we haven't been able to be in a lot of residential programs yet. We're currently in about 40 different agencies coast to coast. And so it was really exciting. And so a year ago, this all started. In November, Carrie and Colette and I came out here. We trained 20, I'm gonna show you their cute faces. Let's see. There they are. So in November, we had the pleasure of coming out back here to train this fantastic group of folks. This is my 8 a.m. Tuesday morning case consult group. And I just want Brendan to share their journey of like their vision and where they are now, because they're a fantastic group of clinicians and just people in general. And we have partnered with them so well, and they're just fun to be around. I mean, honestly, get involved, because it's a really fun group of people to be around. And we really have developed a community. And sometimes, because a lot of us work on our own, right? When you're just seeing client after client, you don't have that connection. And I know like that wasn't even something I planned for, but the connection has been amazing. So I'm gonna introduce Brendan Hollingsworth, and he's gonna share about their adventure with neurofeedback. Yeah.
So we're at about 3.5 hours since this morning here, and that's actually a good marathon time. And we're not done yet. I'm home is in Greater Boston, and my family's in Newton. We're right along the Boston Marathon route, and so we'll bike out and watch. And we're at the bottom of Heartbreak Hill, which is your am I on? Testing 1, 2, 3. No? I can speak. There we go. All right. Thank you, Charlie. So we're at the bottom of Heartbreak Hill, which the reason it's called Heartbreak Hill, if you don't know Boston, is you're 20 miles into the marathon and you're going uphill for the last 6. and I promise that I'm going to try to make this not uphill for everybody. But there's an old trauma conference adage that applies here, that the mind can only absorb what the butt can endure. And so I want to invite you to stand up for a second. And while you're standing, just so I can get a feel for folks in the room, how many of you are in client-facing roles where you're wow. Thank you for being with us here today. Incredible. Okay, how many of you are in administrative, managerial, executive roles where you're just making decisions? Thank you for being here. This is incredible. How about research? How many of you are in research contexts? Okay, wow, this is a significant crew. You can have a seat. And so my goals for you in our time here are threefold. One is that I want you to come away feeling more hope, experiencing more hope, and specifically in holding two values or two goals together that I believe have been bifurcated in our culture. And that is the goal of us as practitioners and leaders flourishing, alongside the goal of our clients flourishing. These two goals are inextricably linked. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but that's one of the goals. So hope. My slideshow is not what's presenting here. Is there a way? Perfect. And then my second goal, and I think this would be all of us that are presenting today, is that you would go out, and if you haven't already, seek out neurofeedback for yourself to experience it. Not just a couple sessions, but a block of 10, 15, 20 weeks where you can get a taste. And I think once you have a taste, you're going to want more of it, and you're going to want more of it for your organization. And then lastly, for all of you who are a part of organizations serving our communities,
Split 3. Split pace, 15 minutes, 3 seconds per mile.
Hope is that you can walk away from here saying, my organization can do this. And we actually have to do this. I know those are big goals. So there's 3 parts to our next few minutes. You're going to hear a story, and really, that's my role here today. Is I'm here to tell a story. It's a story of a clinician and a client and a direct care staff team learning and growing together. It's the story of an organization stepping out into uncharted waters. In this environment, how many organizations do you see doing that right now? It takes a lot of courage and a lot of risk. And then it's a story of not just implementing a modality. It's much bigger than a modality of what we're talking about. So one of the rhythms that I'm trying to build into every context that I'm leaning in, whether that's with a client in a larger group like this, is taking a moment to actually pause together and breathe. And there's a couple of things that I'm valuing in that context. One is the value of cultivating awareness. When we slow our nervous systems down, and this is part of the impact of neurofeedback as well, we're more aware, and that awareness includes being present with each other in a space. And then secondly, it's intentionally cultivating rhythms that build into us as people. And you know, one of the buzzwords of this generation of social sciences is self-care. But often, that's the first thing that goes out the door in whatever is going on. So we're actually gonna do it right now. So what I want to invite you to do, just for a minute, is to get comfortable in your chair. Place your hand on your belly, and you know, with diaphragmatic breathing, it's the belly that rises and falls. And soften your gaze, close your eyes if you're comfortable, and just be for a second, breathing. Okay, as you're ready, just bring your attention back to the room here. It's such a privilege to be in this time and space with you all today. And one thing to add on, for those of us who don't have consistent rhythms of slowing down, sometimes when we start to shift a little bit, it can actually be uncomfortable. And that's a very normal experience. So if your comfort level went down instead of up, that doesn't mean it doesn't work. It means that you're stretching yourself into something I want to invite you into to build into a rhythm. Okay, so there's this amazing journey that the Key Program Neurofeedback Initiative is on. It began in October of 2023 with 12 clinicians that were primarily working in an outpatient trauma clinic. And then in 2025, as Christy mentioned, we shifted into a phase of adding 10 more clinicians, and these clinicians are primarily focused in residential care contexts. So this is a multidisciplinary team of 20 licensed professionals. So just the fact that we have LMHCs, LICSWs, psychologists, and OTs. Are there any OTs in the room? Yeah, there's one. We need more. You have a place here. Yeah, give her a hand. You OTs and Carrie, you have a whole team that are here.
Disorders and autism, neurodivergence, for their place in the world, we're worldwide, and we're all educators and OTs.
Incredible. Well, we in the American context here, I feel like we are growing and need to be continue to encourage to grow into this multidisciplinary collaboration. And the fact that I feel like it's such a privilege for us to have OTs on the team, because they're helping us grow and learn through a lens that is so powerful. And so we're implementing neurofeedback across the continuum of care: in-home, outpatient, foster parent coaching, and residential care programs. One thing that I skipped is I want to introduce myself in terms of just give you a little bit of context for why I'm here, sharing with you now. I am the project manager for the Key Neurofeedback Initiative. I'm also a CEO of the Peak Center, which is bringing neurofeedback to executive and corporate spaces. The most important part of this is I'm a dad, husband and a dad of 6 kids, which is what you might imagine, beautiful chaos. This is my entry point into neurofeedback personally. We're an adoptive family as well. And so this is a part of not just my journey, but our family's journey. And one thing that I think is so powerful about in bringing our stories into something like neurofeedback is when it happens, the us and them barrier begins to dissolve more and more. And when we talk about being compelled to step out into what might be new or novel, and neurofeedback's been around for decades, so it's not new, but to many of us it is new. What compels us to step into these places of learning something new, expending energy, finances, risk, it becomes when we feel the pull, the call that there's something more. And that's been our journey as the KEY program. So I want you to listen. This is me talking with one of our clinicians who's working in a residential care space at the KEY program, and she's going to share a story with you. This is Michaela.
All right, it is such a privilege to introduce you to Michaela Eckhart. Michaela is an LICSW. She's a clinical supervisor with KEY in an intensive treatment residential program. Michaela is going to invite us into a little bit of the journey that she's on with a client and her staff team. I'm just thrilled that y'all can hear about this journey. Thank you, Michaela.
Thank you, Brendan. So yeah, I'm going to tell you a little bit about one of my clients, Rosie. And in particular, Rosie really struggled between November and January of 2025. And that very much looked like significant aggressive reactivity, tantrum-like behaviors that could extend between 2 to 3 hours, sometimes daily, or briefer incidences of dysregulation with aggression noted when it did occur, as well as pretty consistent restraint intervention due to aggression on a weekly basis, on an average about 3 times a week, in addition to hospitalizations and police responses to help Rosie navigate distress. And so that was very much a presentation around this time period.
So there's an acceleration of what you're talking about through the holidays. Hospitalized during January, she returns to the program, and this is the point where you're beginning to implement neurofeedback. So you're discussing as a team, hey, we're going to implement neurofeedback with Rosie. Tell us about this journey of collaborating with your team.
The number one thing that we addressed as a team was the apprehension and better understanding what neurofeedback does, how it works with the brain, and what we are looking for after a session to gain more feedback from staff. Staff training, staff participation in training with Rosie helped facilitate a significant amount of change, while understanding that if staff are apprehensive, addressing those concerns is crucial to better understanding and supporting Rosie.
Yeah, and the reality that in implementing something new, there are going to be concerns, and leaning in and framing it as we are learning this together. My sense from what you're sharing is that there's shared ownership in the process, including with Rosie. So you started neurofeedback. Talk to us about her initial response after those first couple of training sessions.
So Rosie at onset, I understood it was important to titrate treatment so that the changes within her nervous system were tolerable over time. The other piece was Rosie had much more expression of emotions she was experiencing, as well as being able to label those emotions accurately. So many discussions pertain to sadness, grief, sense of loss, or confusion over time that was not previously available for Rosie to discuss either with myself or staff.
And from our conversations, my sense is that the staff were concerned when some of these big emotions were coming up again. And in your processing with them, we're able to identify, hey, there's a qualitative shift in what's coming out. And also recognizing in ourselves internally that there's a pattern of what we expect. And
Split 4. Split pace, 10 minutes, 51 seconds per mile.
are bracing to respond to that. You're inviting a shift in you as a team, which is really, really powerful. And my sense is that the staff did respond to that as the shifts started happening in Rosie. And so tell us, we're about 3.5 months in, but you said 13 training sessions so far. What are you seeing in Rosie real time now?
Move ring closed.
Rosie is absolutely flourishing. So if we're taking a snapshot of what I shared between November and January, what we're looking at now is she's had 2 major incidences, which did lead to aggression and a restraint, but the restraint was incredibly short in duration, which we had not seen up until that point. And tantrum-like behaviors occur on average now about weekly, and they range from 5 to 20 minutes. But there is significant co-regulation that occurs during those moments to allow Rosie to develop self-soothing strategies and coping skills with staff that would have previously been unavailable to her.
But what you're describing is she's able to co-regulate and then process,
Exercise ring closed.
just to be reflective on what just happened in a relational way with staff.
Yes.
That's huge. Wow. Another couple of pieces that you'd mentioned, navigating relationship with peers. There's new exploration and relationship with peers. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Rosie is developing skills to identify her own values and an attunement to her sense of self to formulate connections with her peers. So that it means being able to identify when peers are being friends and when that may not be the case. This also looked like more independent skill building with daily tasks and continued regulation within the academic setting, which has led her to continue making improvements across several grade levels in several of her subjects, which they had not seen prior to neurofeedback training.
Wow. Wow. So the growth isn't limited to one sphere of her life, that you're seeing this transformation and shift happening.
Yes, it
in
is.
many, many spheres. Well, as we close here, I just want to celebrate your work, your part in this, the bravery of saying, I'm going to acquire this new tool chest and be willing to begin implementing that and learning alongside Rosie and other clients and with your team. The amount of effort that is taken and leadership that you have shouldered in that implementation process is huge. So I'm just so grateful to you. I respect you deeply as we journey as a team. So thanks so much for sharing.
Of course.
How many of y'all, yes.
All right, it is.
How many of y'all want this for your clients? How many of y'all want this for your staff? And there's a few things that and let me pause. We have a couple of folks from the Key program here today. You're going to hear from Karen in a little bit. I want to honor Alyssa. Alyssa is one of our clinicians in a residential care context who's here. Just want to honor you in the same way I honored Michaela. Thank you for the way that you are leading out in our organization. So a couple of takeaways that I really want us to hold on to here. One, did you hear the shift in a sense of self, an ability to lean into relational proximity? And this is out in Western Mass. A few weeks ago, I went and visited, and I just happened to be there. We weren't even planning this. Happened to be there when Rosie came in the door from school. They were celebrating. She had ridden the bus for the first time. And the team, the clinical and the direct care staff team were there celebrating with her. There was a shift in the atmosphere, and I don't know the before and after, but I just know when you go from multiple restraints a week to what I saw, there's a shift in the environment that's occurred. And she sat down next to me. She had a little remote control car, and I said, "Hey, tell me about neuro. I hear you're doing neurofeedback." And she just smiled and kind of gave me the side eye. It was beautiful, beautiful. And so there's a reflective learning. And what does reflective learning mean? It means that her prefrontal cortex is connecting with her feeling brain, her reflective her emotional learning brain. That's a shift that's happening. Another takeaway that I really want us to hold on to is the collaboration of clinical and frontline staff. Did you hear that? And one of the nuances was, as Rosie was coming back from hospitalization, the team knew that this was kind of make or break for her in this program. And when Michaela came to the direct care staff team and said, we're gonna do neurofeedback, they said, whoa, we can't risk to rock the boat in any way, shape, or form. And she said, I hear you, trust me, and we're gonna work together on this. And so they did. They started doing this as a team. Now, a whole nother level. And this is neurofeedback as a lens, as not just a tool, but a toolbox and a lens. Another piece of this was Michaela was able to navigate with the staff when after the first couple of sessions, there is lability, there's emotional reactivity there. But she's able to, the awareness to say, this is grief. This is sadness. This is something that we haven't experienced before. And our nervous systems are hardwired to anticipate or to react to what we're used to coming at us. So this is an opportunity for us to shift our own ways of working and operating. Is that powerful? And again, do you want that for your team? Something that's big and deep enough that can be a framework that allows for relational and professional collaboration between roles that usually have tension and conflict. It's powerful. Okay, I want to back up just for a second and talk about what is it going to take to shift organizational patterns of trauma. So if this top line is developmental trauma, which often happens in families, right? And the second line is the child's experience of existing in those patterns. And we know from a brain and nervous system standpoint that these patterns are hardwired into us. They affect our entire being, mind, body, emotions. And there's a spiritual component, right? Our sense of self and worth and the world around us. The gravitational pull of this crisis for us as individual practitioners and for us as organizations is enormous. To use a Star Wars analogy, this is like a tractor beam, right? Once you're caught in this tractor beam, you're getting sucked in to these rhythms. And what does this result in? It results in burnout. It's the sustaining or even amplifying patterns of trauma. How many of you can relate to that professionally as well as organizationally? This is where we're at. This is what we're wrestling with, especially, pandemic shut down, post-pandemic, where there's a hemorrhaging of people leaving our line of work, meaning leaving the oh, I gotta go. I gotta hurry. Thank you so much. Okay, so looking through an attachment lens, what I'm talking about is co-regulation. That we have to do our work to be regulated, to live outside these patterns of crisis and to enter in with the clients that we serve with our regulation. Okay, so I want to talk about real quick tension. We see tension as being a bad thing. This is my kids jumping in our backyard. Tension can be destructive, but you know what? Tension can also bring power. It can be dynamic. It can bring life. And so I'm going to have to really go fast. 2 points of tension: the flourishing of clients and the flourishing of us as providers. We have to knit that back together. Similarly, compassion, the Latin etymology of calm with, passion, to suffer. For us to join with, to enter into the reality of our clients' lives, but also cling to the hope that there is that growth, that transformation is possible. For many of us, that's been rending. It's literally been tearing. And neurofeedback is something that can meet us in these places. Okay, so the last few minutes, what I want to do is talk about 4 chapters in the Key Program's Neurofeedback Initiative journey. And this first chapter, I think, is probably the most pivotal, and it's a chapter of alignment. And the takeaway here is that sustained, authentic buy-in from executive leadership is the essential foundation to building an initiative like this. And so I want to invite Karen Flannery. Karen is the clinical director at Key Program. She's the one who has yeah, go for it. Go for it. Yeah, she is. So my question for you, Karen, is both personally as clinical director at an executive level for Key Program, and then as for the executive team as a whole, what caused you to step out into uncharted waters?
Yeah. So I'll tell you a little bit about Key. So the Key Program is a large nonprofit. We have about 400 employees. And we have about 18 residential programs in the state of Mass. We have one in Providence, Rhode Island, and then we do some community-based work in New Hampshire. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary. I've been with Key for 33 of those 50 years. So I've seen many, many, many youth come in and out of our residential programs, not ready to sit and talk about their trauma, not ready to trust the next clinician who's there to hear their story. So when Brendan had brought this idea of this neurofeedback journey to the leadership team, I felt that there was no better time. We mentioned clinician turnover and just finding licensed clinicians who want to work in residential. I don't know how many of you have actually worked in a residential setting, but the burnout, we're not a campus-based residential. We have what looks to be regular houses, 7 to 9 youth, very community-based. The youth go to school in the community. We want them to get jobs. So very community-based. And we were going through residential caseworkers very quickly. Oftentimes it's the first job out of college, right? You get a bachelor's degree, you go and you work in residential. And then we give you the most traumatized children to work with. And the same was true for clinicians who were really getting burnt out, not really holding on to the hope that brought them into the field. So we were lucky. Obviously, you listen to Brendan. He's so passionate. He's so bright. We're like, we're going to try this. Fortunate to have a CEO who had been with the agency just 3 years, a risk taker, willing to try anything, and also a CFO who hadn't been there that long either, who came from the hospital world and was like, we're going to try this. We're going to invest. We're going to send, this large group of clinicians to training. We're going to try this because it sort of aligns with our bigger agency objectives of reducing restraint, retaining staff. I could go on and on. I could talk about all the benefits, but it just sort of, aligned with all of our other agency missions. So, we could give lots and lots of examples of how we have been able to retain bright, brilliant clinicians who are feeling like they're, seeing progress. We're experiencing shorter stays for youth that have had multiple placements. Kids that would have disrupted from the placement months and months ago without this intervention. I can think of a specific example, a 10-year-old. We have mostly adolescent programs, but we do have one latency age. A youth who 5 minutes, was restrained 30 times in a month, has done neurofeedback for 15 sessions, 2 restraints in a week. I mean, it's unbelievable. And it's almost, when Colette says it's not a magic bullet, we feel like maybe it is. I mean, just because it's just been so remarkable and we're new on this journey, and hopefully we'll be back next year talking about more amazing stories. So, yeah.
Thank you. So one of the reasons it's not a magic bullet is because neuroscience is screaming one thing more than anything else, I believe, and that is we're made for relationship. And what neurofeedback is doing, I feel like in a lot of contexts, is it's paving the way for these our amazing clients to lean in and tolerate relational proximity and to learn and grow in that context. And guess what? We get to receive from them too. So we have a couple minutes. You need vision and values. Where are you going? Really, where do you want to go? And what are the values, meaning how are we going to work together as a team to get there? And you need mentors. One of the biggest takeaways from the vision values piece is you need like-minded mentors. And that's where NAP has come in for us. That's a close colleague and friend, Seaburn Fisher, Kim Antonell, who's a local pioneer and practitioner. Just so grateful to them for the way that they've come alongside us in so many ways. I'm just gonna pause here and say one more thing. That's not on the slides. One of the biggest challenges when we go back to the loops of crisis that we're in, we move to behavioral focus. We just get sucked into it. And when we focus on behaviorals, we grasp for control. And there's these cycles of control between us and the clients we serve. It doesn't work. And one thing that's so powerful about neurofeedback, and you saw this in Rosie's story, is we're rewriting the narrative. We're empowered. You're doing the work. This is you coming out. I'm not doing something to you. We're collaborating, and this is you that's coming out. And we talk about a whole swath, if we're talking about accessibility and equity, there's a lot of folks that don't even want to deal with therapy because therapy has been equated with pathologizing. So they don't even want to walk in our doors. And so I think there's a call in our profession, if we're talking about accessibility, is to rewrite the narrative of what it is that we're doing and how we're collaborating together. And you know, using that marathon running analogy, the research is a marathon. Ask Bernhard, how much work and time do they put into research? It's a marathon. Well, you know what? Implementation to where things are accessible in communities, that is a marathon. Is it hard work? Oh my goodness. So we've got to implement this. We've got to figure out together how to step into places where we're doing things in systems that there's not a place for us yet. But it's time. I'm done. Thank you. Hope. Have hope. Go out and experience neurofeedback, and you can do this.
Thank you, guys. So we're going to try again to get our good folks in Switzerland to tell us about the science of neurofeedback using fMRI. We'll also have time for questions where actually all of the panelists will go up, and then you're free to ask, you know, any question related to things together. So one more time. Maybe it'll work. It will work. Yeah, positive thinking. I like that. I'm off.
Hello? Oh.
We hear you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, then, yes. Thank you very much for having me. No worries regarding the confusion. I will go quickly through my presentation, and I offer, of course, that everyone who's interested in having the talk, they can send me just an email, and I will send him a PDF or the PowerPoint as wished. All right, then. Hope is a nice word for what was at the beginning of our, let's say, adventurous journey in trying to disassembling the infra-low frequency neurofeedback components, because as, let's say, as physician and basic researcher, we did not had a lot of trust that we will find such robust effects as I will going to present you. So, next slide. Oh, sorry, no, slide back. Exactly. So here, just the funding statement, the ethics statement, and the data and code availability. So of course, everything can be required by our group. So if someone is interested in having the data or want to recalculate our results, then please go ahead. Funding, it was funded by the Trauma Research Foundation. And of course, we had an approved accordance with the regulations of the Canton of Zurich and also the Declaration of Helsinki. Okay, next slide. It was a nice collaboration between B-Medic, so Bernhard Wandernot just had the talk before me, and we of course had the research agreement, as also Bernhard mentioned, between the University of Zurich, or our department especially, and the Trauma Research Foundation, which is always important to mention in such talks. Next slide. So in principle, we are done now because the whole project has just recently been published in Neuroimage. So for all of you who are really interested in having more details about this whole project and this journey, please go ahead and read the paper, including the supplementary data. Next slide. So I could make my work really easy, and thank you for your attention. And again, please read the paper. But now is where the fun starts. Next slide. Because if you go through the publications related with neurofeedback and the ILF neurofeedback approach, as Bernhard already a bit touched, you have around 360 publications in 2025 for neurofeedback and around 5 for ILF neurofeedback. And in 2026, there are only 2 until now. So one of them is our publication. Next slide. And here again, next slide, because exactly, thank you. Because it's really interesting to note that there are some nicely published papers out there, and this has been summarized in a very nice review by Bassan et al. Also here, I strongly recommend to read this review as well as the single papers. But the problem highlighted here are when you focus on the topics, then you see, for example, epilepsy, obesity, PTSD, depression, fibromyalgia, concussion, and so on. So there is a heavy variety of topics investigated throughout the, let's say, the last 10, 12 years. The same with subjects and corresponding control groups. So for example, there are papers out there investigating 3 subjects, 1 subject, or 40 subjects. Some have controls, others do not have controls. So also here again, the same challenge, a lot of heterogeneity. Same with sessions and electrode positions. Next slide. Summarized shortly here, this meta-analysis has identified 18 very nicely made, I must say, very nicely made neurofeedback studies. But the problem really is that the clinical domains, the sessions, electrode positions, and so on, are multiple and very heterogeneous. So the reported effects are focusing on brain connectivity, autonomic regulation, stress, arousal system, symptom reduction. So there is also one study who, comparable to our study, just focused on healthy subjects. So a quote from the Bassan et al. Group is from the clinical profile, a salient common observation is a high level of individualization as a specific characteristic of ILF training. This feature seems to correlate with effectiveness of ILF neurofeedback, but also poses a challenge for researchers in terms of producing control and comparable findings. And I think I come here back to what Bernhard was mentioned, because obviously ILF or also classical neurofeedback and ILF neurofeedback seems to work quite astonishingly, but there is really a problem to find the underlying mechanisms. So next slide. Towards this problem, there is a nice consensus paper from 2022 trying to deciphering the components possibly influencing the clinical effects in both infra-low and infra-slow frequency neurofeedback, which is not exactly the same. But with this slide, I just want to present you the variety of possible factors that could possibly influence then finally the clinical outcomes. And also here, I strongly recommend to read this paper for those who are not familiar with. Next slide. So now I come to our project approach. So the basic key question was, which feedback components drive finally the neurophysiological and behavioral effects effects? Next slide. Okay, so study three was the combination of both components. Next slide. Should I repeat this slide, or I think it's self-explaining, so we just conducted 3 studies. One is frequency band, the classical frequency band alone versus a sham condition. Then study 2 was the ILF components alone versus a sham ILF condition, and study 3 was the combination of both components. Next slide. Some words to the study population and procedure itself. 40 healthy participants. It's important to note that we wanted to investigate healthy participants. Aged above 18 years, German speaking, and the obvious other requirements like no neurofeedback experience, no general or MRI contraindications. Then towards a procedure, we had a verum and a sham condition for all of the 3 sub-studies. So for example, for the frequency band only, they were only the feedback elements linked to conventional EEG frequency bands active. ILF only were only the infra-low frequency dynamics active. And of course, then with the combination, both feedback components were simultaneously active and presented. Regarding the sham condition, there was a corresponding sham procedure. And common across all studies was identical neurofeedback animation, identical electrode placement, the same software platform. This was Signet from BMedic, double-blind design, and we had an automated randomization, so neither us as experimenters nor the subjects knew whether they are under the verum or the sham condition. Next slide. Here again is a little bit more detailed illustration. So we had 2 measurement days at a minimal 2 weeks apart. Preparation, we applied some questionnaires, as you can see. Then after the questionnaires, there was the pre-measurement fMRI, so before the actual ILF, verum or sham procedure. They recorded an EEG, the respiration, ectodermal activity, and heart rate variability. Then just after that, we applied another questionnaire. And post ILF NFP, the post-neurofeedback procedure, was another measurement, another fMRI measurement. Also here we assessed respiration and heart rate variability. And then we sent the questionnaire for the 24 hours again after the experiment as a follow-up questionnaire. There were 2 measurement days, as mentioned, and the subjects were randomly assigned to, in measurement day 1, either to Verum or the sham condition, and in measurement day 2, then to the corresponding other condition. As said, automated randomization via the Signet software, participant and examiners were blinded. Next slide. So yeah, I don't know how familiar the audience is with functional connectivity, so I just put in 2 slides to explain the basic, let's say, approach of how such connectivity measures can be calculated. So basically, really easy, you have 2 regions, A and B. These 2 regions have some activity. They show activity over time. Then you have a relationship over time. So the activity can fluctuate together in synchrony, and then they are functionally connected. And the functional connectivity at the 3rd row finally represents the strength of this relationship and reflects how strongly the regions are functionally connected. Next slide. What we applied here is not that often applied in functional connectivity studies because it's quite a rigorous approach. It's called this functional connectivity multivariate pattern analysis. And it basically identifies brain areas whose overall connectivity profile with the rest of the brain differs between the conditions. So it's not that trivial, but it's also not that difficult. Just take one brain location, compute the connectivity with the whole brain, then compare the patterns between the condition, in our case was the Verum group and the sham group, and repeat that for all locations in the brain. So it's very computing intensive, but the advantage is that you don't have any prior assumptions to take. So it's quite of a neutral data analysis or a data analysis approach, which makes it, on the one hand, really interesting for generating new hypotheses. And the other hand, as I said, it's really computing intensive. Okay, next slide. Maybe here's some words again to our paper. For more detailed information, of course, please give the paper a read, because here I will just strive a little bit the surface of our results. But interesting here is when you look from left to right. Left, you have the frequency band only study. In the middle, you have the ILF only study. And at the right side, you have the combination of the 2 components. So the red regions here indicate brain locations where functional connectivity patterns change differently between the Verum, the sham condition, which was for us very astonishing that we at least have some the combination of the 2 components, which I will go in further detail with the next slide. Next slide. Perfect. So what you see here is basically the exact same calculation as you saw a slide before, but here with the important difference highlighted in yellow, that we applied here a quite robust statistical threshold. This is important because this robustness finally lead us to the assumption and to the conclusion I will discuss a few slides later. But just to be aware that only the combination of the two components finally came along with this very robust results. The next slide, please. Following the initial MVPA, there was a post hoc analysis called the post-hoc seek-to-voxel analysis. That means simply that the clusters from the MVPA were taken as seeds, and then we calculated every connections to every other brain regions again, deriving from these seeds. So interesting, seed 1, we did not reveal any significant other clusters, but seed 2 and seed 3 were accompanied with quite an impressive connectivity pattern across the regions you see here. And for completeness, I put in the whole table, which I think it's a bit too time-consuming here to go through. But the take-home message from this slide is that from this initial MVPA, we see in a post-hoc C2Vox analysis that these regions seem to communicate with quite a large and divided areas of other brain regions. The next slide. Interestingly, the psychophysical data, because you remember we also assessed respiration and heart rate variability, only the combined application of the two components more next slide. Next slide. So, perfect. Here is a really interesting pattern, because this slide relates to the questionnaire data, and as you can see, we also divided that into the 3 studies. And interestingly, the ILF only study revealed the difference between the two conditions in most of the items. So the take-home message here is, obviously, we were not able to catch with our methods some, let's say, neurophysiological or psychophysiological results, but somehow the people seemed to experience some differences when applying only these ILF components. Okay, the next slide. So back to our key questions regarding the deciphering of the key gaps of this approach. It's really interesting, because from a functional connectivity perspective, from a psychophysical perspective, we saw a really robust result, or significantly robust result, only in the combined application of the components. But to our astonishment, and this is quite extensively discussed also in the paper, the most obvious difference in the subjective experience was when applying the infra-low frequency components alone. But interestingly, no connectivity or psychophysical differences were measured. Really interesting, and we stand just at the beginning of understanding how and what in detail works in that direction. Then the next slide, please. For us, it was a really adventurous journey, honestly, because we were not familiar with neurofeedback and especially with ILF neurofeedback, and we do not apply that clinically. But to our interest or to our astonishment, I would say that this method can alter brain connectivity, can alter psychophysical functioning, and can also alter in a very sublime manner the experiential effects of our, let's say, our mind. Because what we also have to keep in mind is there was a single session, so only one session applied, healthy volunteers, and despite that non-clinical application, we see some very robust differences, which encourages us to go really further and to dig deeper into the enigma of how neurofeedback and especially how infra-low frequency neurofeedback work. So that was my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So if we could have this, not feedback. Okay, if we could have the speakers go up, we have a quick 9 minutes, and I know that there are some questions also online, and I want to be sensitive to that, to those who are not physically here. So while you guys set up, I'm just going to go back here and get a few of the online questions going. Okay. Some questions from our beautiful people at home.
Yes. So the first question, there have been a few people wondering about the affordability of the training and the equipment needed for this.
So affordability and equipment needed for training. There's a question online.
So, can you hear me?
This makes it very hard.
I don't know if online can hear me. So, if you're looking at a system, there are several different ways that you can enter into neurofeedback. With the Neurofeedback Advocacy Project, what we do is you're provided a system for the first year of training for each clinician that's trained, and you pay a fee for, it's 5 modules over the course of a year that you're getting infralow neurofeedback, you're getting consultations, pretty much on demand, especially in the beginning, in the first 3-4 months that you're trained. But for that first whole year, you get a system. B-Medic is our training partner. They give us a system for each clinician to use because we want you to be using it. You need to use it to become confident and competent in the modality. After that, you make a decision. You can lease the equipment from B-Medic or you can purchase it. A full system, you're looking, one with all the bells and whistles, you could get up to $18,000 for a system. You can get a system for $12,000, and then you need a gaming computer to run that. You don't need all the bells and whistles. Sometimes it's nice to have them, but you can get in. When I say $12,000, people are like, oh, that's the car, the entry-level car that doesn't have power windows. No. If you go in an entry level, you're going to get a robust system that's going to be beneficial for you. So it is that. The training, there's different people that train. There's several training partners with the Neurofeedback Advocacy Project. Over that course of a year, it's $7,200 for a clinician to be trained for that year. Again, that's all the consultation calls. That's the 5 modalities of training. So you're trained in infralow, synchrony, and alpha theta at the end of that year. After that year, it's $100 a month to be part of the NAP cohort, where you continue to have consultations with the cohort. You get advanced trainings. You can audit the old trainings, because a lot of times it's like somebody mentioned earlier, drinking through a fire hose. You can go back and audit and just sit through the lectures of those trainings again at no cost. It's just a benefit. And then we do advanced trainings and more webinars.
Is there a main website for all the training sites that lists all the training sites?
BMedic has a training partners page that you can look at, as well as you can go to the neurofeedbackadvocacyproject.com and you can get information there as well.
And Colette, I might add to that. Each clinician does not necessarily need their own system. And so when we started, we had one system and 2 or 3 of us shared that. So there is some cost savings. There are multiple people, like I took Monday, Wednesday, someone else took Tuesday, Thursday clients. So there's a lot of flexibility with that. So you don't necessarily need a system per person.
Yes, so to clarify, in that first year of the NAP, you get a system. It's just part of the training. But as Christy said, I have 10 trained clinicians and we have 6 systems that we share.
Hi, my question is related. I used to work at a community health center in Boston, and last June, our trauma-informed staff is mostly laid off. A number of us have taken our most complex clients with complex developmental trauma into our private practices. We still meet together, but we are not individually able to buy a system for our private practice in Boston. And I wonder how these clients, many of whom are Medicare, Medicaid, or we're just doing pro bono or low fee, how those people might access what they need.
We're trying to come up with that answer.
$1 million. Yeah.
And I'll say this, we're going to be at the BMedic table in the lobby. Please come and talk to us. I am game to talk about anything that's going to bring this to the underserved population. We have an amazing partnership with BMedic. This is a passion project for all of us to make this happen. So I'm not sure exactly what the answer is, but I'm willing to actually talk about it and figure it out.
They also can rent the equipment after the first year. They don't have to buy the equipment. Right. So for those who don't want to put out that expenditure, they can spread the cost over by future rentals.
You can lease the equipment. Go ahead.
I have a different question. Anti-aging, is neurofeedback also helping not to get dementia or something?
Well, we don't treat diagnoses, but I'll say this. There's a lot of hypothesis out there that it is helping with the aging process. I think longitudinal will figure that out as we go, and we need more studies in that area. It does help with memory. It does help with post-stroke rehab. So you do see a lot of improvement with resilience when it comes to that. So I don't know of any exact studies that have been done on dementia, but I think those are areas that we want to start looking at. For sure.
I had a related question online asking if it can help for people demonstrating early dementia.
It cannot stop something that's happening, but it can slow the process, is what we're finding. And again, those are anecdotal answers to that, but we need more studies to look at that. But I think what we're going to find out is that it has a huge impact on it.
Well, what we hear from post-market surveys is where they use it in retirement homes and all of that, is that it improves quality of life. People sleep better. They don't run away so many times. They are less aggressive. And many of the day-to-day things work much better, so it increases quality of life. And we would love to do a pilot program or a larger study looking at this and looking at data.
Maybe you can start already where you have not that problem, so preventive.
Well,
I'm going to try.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Good.
I'll tell you this. I trained someone with prefrontal lobe dementia. And what we did find is that anxiety went way down, couldn't leave the house, was able to do things with his wife and was able to actually engage more in, just social activities. And the level of irritability and emotional reactivity went way down. Now, that's quality of life. That's what Bernhard's talking about.
Did you say you had 1,761 data sets? EEG data sets that are available for analysis? Because the meta-analysis, the maximum size, was an N of 40 in any of the studies.
So our N is not an EEG data set. It is actually from our results tracking system. We have 1,750 plus clients that have gone to 20 sessions. And what we have measured is, their concerns. What are the symptoms that these would be better? And it's their symptom resolution that we're measuring. It's not EEG data sets.
So the EEG from the neurofeedback sessions was not stored?
No.
I do want to say it is 1 o'clock. I don't want to prevent the party from keeping on going, but it is 1. So if you want to keep going.
It's up to you guys.
I have a question about the intersection of dissociation. I think I saw one mention of it on one of the slides. Here on the research side, are people being screened out if they have complex dissociative disorders? Or do you have any information from the data that's collected about dissociative symptoms and how that interacts?
Well, so, no, they're not selected out. Actually, dissociation is something that we actually target. And so it's considered an instability, and it's that shutdown. It's that being able to shift states, and it's that complete shutdown. So there's actually protocols that will address that. From a standpoint of direct relation, we would have to pull that out to really see that. And it's something that, as we improve our technology, we're trying to do. But they're definitely not selected out.
Well, thank you so much, guys. These guys will be here, and it sounds like you're at a specific booth. Do you want to tell them where exactly it is?
We're going to do a demonstration at 6 o'clock this evening. If you want to see, we're at the B-Medic booth. Again, come and ask us any questions. Come and see the demonstration. We'll do another one tomorrow and Friday, so every afternoon we'll do a demonstration. Would love to talk to you more about that, all of these topics. Do you have any more online questions?